Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ventures. I'm excited about this episode with Jed Collins. But first, I'd like to talk about a few of our sponsors that make this show possible. And in full disclosure, I am a venture builder and investor in these companies. Number one, Satchel. Satchel is a simplified newsletter and publishing platform to help communication between creators and their community. So if you go to satchel.works, it's in private alpha right now, but if you apply, I can get you in. And you can also go to wclittle.com to check out my Satchel site. Number two, Startup Rocket. If you go to startuprocket.com, there you can receive customized coaching for you as an entrepreneur, spinning up your side hustles, or even spinning up a startup of your own that you're getting serious about. It has comprehensive frameworks to guide you through the process. And number three, for the bird lovers out there, check out Bird Buddy, mybirdbuddy.com. They've currently raised over $2.3 million on Kickstarter, and it is a AI-assisted smart bird feeder. So you can get pictures of birds that are visiting you in your yard, and it uses AI to detect exactly what kind of bird it is, so you can collect, share. It's super fun. Check it out, mybirdbuddy.com. So, for today's episode with Jed, we're going to be diving into all things financial literacy. He is an entrepreneur, started his career in the NFL. I mean, we talk about his stories, getting into playing fullback in the NFL. It's a very, very inspiring story. And then we talk about his new entrepreneurial efforts to try to teach financial literacy. He has a book, he has a course. We'll put links to all of this material in the show notes. So I'm very excited for this episode. If you are listening, you can also watch by visiting wclittle.com, and there we'll have more extensive show notes to the things that we talk about today. And if you're watching, you can also listen anywhere that you get your podcasts. You can just search for Ventures. So with that, please enjoy this episode with Jed Collins. All right, Jed, welcome to the show.
Will, appreciate you having me on. Honestly, the world is funny and how it works, but you're coming into my space at a time when I'm trying to become a better entrepreneur. And as much as I'm excited to share my message with your audience, I'm more excited to learn from you as we go along, bro. So this is gonna be fun.
Awesome, man. Great to have you. So why don't we start? Just share a little bit about your story and kind of your background and what you're up to.
So I was born on a cold, no, I'm just kidding. So I got to chase the dream. I got to, go from being a collegiate football player at Washington State University and enter into the National Football League. And it was a really neat kind of transition, but it was one that really woke me up to a big pain point and a big problem in our system and our society. So as everybody can expect, I was a fullback, so I was a no-name player. I was an undrafted guy, so I got cut a dozen times. Now, eventually, I became the number one fullback in the NFL and arguably the best in the world at what I was doing. But what it really alerted me to was my first paycheck, my rookie year, came in and went out the day I earned it. And with that realization, I started to look around and say, I was a business major. I got a great accounting degree from Washington State University, but nobody had ever sat me down and said, Jed, you're going to make money. Here's what to go do with it. Nobody had given me the case study on, the Johnson family, making 75,000. We'd always worked with, XYZ company and 100,000 widgets. And so in a nutshell, what I realized was my dream was coming to fruition, playing in the NFL, competing against the best in the world. But what you really wake up to is that's not the dream. The dream is to not just get to the show. The dream is to capture the opportunity. And I began to see, as an undrafted guy, I was never going to be the $100 million contract player. If I didn't start to do things differently than everybody else in the locker room, I was never going to walk out of that locker room having truly captured the NFL dream and opportunity. And so it shifted for me, both in my mindset and my actions, the idea that there's a significant difference between being rich and being wealthy.
Mm.
And what we really need to start to understand was, well, how does wealth work? What is that language? And where could I go start learning this secret language that nobody's ever told me?
So you're in the NFL. What team do you play for? What years? Just for those who aren't familiar.
Yeah. Oh, I expect most to be unfamiliar. So again, I played 7 seasons, most of which was down in New Orleans. Who dat for the Saints. Will always be a big fan of New Orleans. They changed my life. And then my final year was 2014 with the Detroit Lions. The only time they've gone to the playoffs in the last 20 years. I'm not saying it was because of me, but you can make that. And then my first few years was bouncing around on practice squads, starting in Philadelphia, the Chicago Bears, Cleveland Browns twice, the Arizona Cardinals, Tennessee Titans. So I got to meet and walk into a lot of locker rooms. And that's where I really began to be able to steal from veterans, getting cut and bouncing. You start to see like, ooh, what does that 14-year offensive lineman do? Or that 20-year kicker? Or that 9-year safety? Like, what are all these guys about?
Mm.
So yeah, my journey was definitely changed in the Big Easy, and I loved my time down in New Orleans. It was a
That's
good
great.
show.
I mean, I'm sure it's an entrepreneurial story in and of itself. Just to get
Oh,
into the NFL, how did you do it?
so I needed to build a character, and I think more entrepreneurs need to really understand as you launch out. Number one, nobody's going to see your mission or your vision before you do.
Mm.
You have to see it so clearly. You have to repeat it and be able to repeat it hundreds and thousands of times. And so as I became, I transitioned from college to the NFL. I actually switched positions. I was a, receiving tight end in college. I was a linebacker in high school,
Mm.
and I became a lead blocking fullback in the NFL because I'm a little short and I'm a little slow compared to NFL tight ends. And so that transition in and of itself realized I, as a person, needed to adapt, not just my persona, but my mindset. And so this character, and people know it and jokingly refer to it as Jedzilla, was the guy who could go out on the field and do the dirty work, do the job. And as entrepreneurs, I think we need to build that character in our mind because that's where we gain our strength. That's where we really are allowed to hear the words no, to fail time and time again. I say now with a badge of honor, I got cut 12 times. I failed a dozen times, told my dream was over. And if you talk to most good entrepreneurs, they laugh at 12.
Right.
They welcome 12. Um, 12 might come in a day for some entrepreneurs or salespeople because they, in the same breath, have to be just as thick skinned. So that identification of I needed to identify not just who I was, but who the coaches needed me to be and to be able to fill that void. And so becoming a lead blocking fullback, I could no longer be the jack of all trades, which is another beautiful, beautiful message to young entrepreneurs
Mm.
is do not be the third best at a lot of things. Find the one thing and
Mm.
be the best at that. The only reason I made an NFL team, the only reason anybody makes an NFL team is because they can confidently say, when I step on the field, I'm the best on the field at this thing.
Mm.
Everybody has something. And I recently read a study around Red Bull. Red Bull sold one product and grew a globally known brand. And so that really has helped me both on the field as my measurement was going to be lead blocking collisions, specific plays where they needed a player like me. In
Mm.
my business, what was going to become that job number one, that North Star.
So this is amazing. So I want to ask a few more questions about this. So it's presumably you're at Wazoo.
Yep.
You're a Cougar as a receiving tight end.
Mm-hmm. Led the nation in receptions as a tight end up until my last game because I missed it due to injury.
Oh,
So I ended up with about 53 catches my senior year.
wow. Okay. So then, what's the story from there to going and trying to get on the NFL? It sounds like you got cut a bunch from NFL
Yeah.
teams. What was that process like to find your sweet spot as the fullback there for specific plays? I mean, that in and of itself is interesting, but I'm curious
Yeah.
about that journey.
Yeah. So, you arrive in the next level and you realize, the biggest difference between, high school and college is speed. Everybody's just faster. The biggest difference between college and the NFL is people don't make mistakes.
Mm.
You make too many mistakes, you don't have a job. And so I started to look at and say, in college, I could exploit players for their weaknesses.
Mm.
I was never as fast or as this or that, but I could go down my criteria and I can look at you as a linebacker and say, I know how to get open against you because I'm going to beat you X, Y, or Z.
Mm.
In the NFL, I couldn't do that. Those guys are just too good. They're too fast, and they're just better athletes to my acuteness or whatever. Um, and so coaches came to me and said, listen, you're not a tight end in the NFL. First off, I was deemed the shortest starting tight end in the NCAA my senior year, which was the only year I started. Again, I'm a story of coming out of kind of left field and finding success. But they told me, they're like, hey, 6'1", you're not going to play tight end. Running a 5 flat, you probably aren't going to play in the NFL. Um, and so they said, this is the role we think you can play. And at first, it was kind of this H-back / tight end fullback kind of character.
Mm.
And so I came on to teams, the Eagles, my first teams my rookie year, and I said, hey, guys, I could be a fullback, but I can also be a backup tight end. I can also long snap. I can also be on other special teams. If you need a third down back to pick up, I can also do that. And I got lost in the waves, lost in the, well, Jed, when we call a play, when do we call you?
Mm.
When we set up and we scout and we say, hey, here's our strategy. We need Jed Collins for this play to go do this thing. What play is that for you? And I didn't have one. And I wasn't ready to define myself as a lead blocker. ISOs, are a man's job. And fullback, I will be the first one to say, is not a position of skill. It's one of will. Pun intended there, Will. But are you willing to do it over and over and over again? When that other guy knows what play is coming, are you willing to see who has the pop gun and who has the machine gun and meet him in the hole and prove your worth?
Mm.
And that was a really big mental challenge for me. I would have to circle the field before every game. I would do 2 laps, kind of like the walls of Jericho from the Bible. And then I would walk straight down the 50-yard line, and standing on the emblem, I would stare at my opponent. And in my head, I would have to repeat, I'm bigger than you. I'm better than you. I'm badder than you. I'm going to beat you. I'm not afraid of you. You are going to fear me. And those thoughts would just continue to pour and pour and pour. And this is an hour before kickoff, you know what I mean? And those guys had no idea what I was doing, but my teammates did.
Yeah.
And then what's a little insight into me is my last piece after I would, verbally assault and diminish these guys in my head, I would look to the sky and I would make peace with the idea that I might not be walking off this field. And I did that every game. And my teammates were like, Jed, stop saying that stuff to yourself before a game. And I'm like, it's just part of what I had to do. And so Jedzilla, creating that character, creating that person that I still always feared it, but I welcomed it. And I began to go into games and collisions with the idea of, man, this is going to hurt, changing to, I'm going to make this hurt for you more than it does for me.
Hmm. So then that sounds like quite a journey of trying to giving it a go, getting cut, giving it a go, getting cut. And then when did you finally get this? Sounds like the Saints brought you. What was that once you finally got it? Tell us that story.
So another just odd coincidence. So 2011, we were going through the collective bargaining agreement with the National Football League as a union, as a team. And so once we finally went back to work, there was some stipulations that said any new contracts couldn't practice for 3 days. I'm not even really positive why, but any free agents couldn't get out on the practice field. And so the Saints had just signed another fullback, given him some money, and was going to be the starting fullback for the New Orleans Saints that year. Unbeknownst to them, I had other ideas. And this little loophole with the CBA allowed me to start training camp day 1, standing in the huddle next to Drew Brees. And day 1 and 2, you pretty much only put in lead ISO right and lead ISO left. So I was also going to get a lot of reps. And it was that moment in time where, my second and third year, my mindset and mentality started to shift. My third year, I came to the conclusion of, like, make a team or get on IR, which is injured reserve, which is kind of technically making the team. And by my fourth season, it was, you have no other options. You either make it or your career and your dream is over. So I finally had a fire and a hunger that I could compete with guys who were hungry and fired up. And so those first 2 or 3 days, I went out, spit on fire and hit everything that moved. And just, I'm actually in the midst of sharing my story on TikTok
Mm.
around 4 plays in the first preseason game that year against the Texans, the Houston Texans, where we had 4 ISOs in a row, and I won all 4 ISOs in a game against, Brian Cushing, who was a Pro Bowl linebacker, and a guy named Adibi, who was a solid starting linebacker. And 4 plays in a row, I hit them, and we got positive gains. And so I took this little loophole opportunity, and I looked at my coach and I said, that guy is never going to get in my huddle. He might come back in 3 days. You guys maybe have already given him money. He is not going to take this job from me. And I never let him do it. From that day forward, I was the starting fullback of the Saints for the 4 years I was there.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So, okay. So then after your NFL, sounds like you gave it a go. I'd love to talk about NFL future podcast.
It's intoxicating.
Yeah, no, that's great. So then after NFL, right, common stories, a lot of stories have been taught about NFL players just burning through all their money and just having real significant financial troubles afterwards. So what led you into what you're doing now? And maybe for those who aren't familiar, maybe explain kind of what you're up to these days.
Absolutely. So I mentioned that first paycheck coming in and going out the day of. Now, I will give a little disclosure. I bought an engagement ring, which is a cute story. My wife and I are still happily married after 12 years, But the idea that I was a spender, the idea that money came in and went out the same day, woke me up to the truth. Again, accounting major. I grew up in Orange County, California, around a lot of money. My family is very highly educated, but none of us understood money. And so it shook me, and I started to seek answers. I went to Borders bookstores, which for some of you is this weird building with just a bunch of books in it, and you would like walk through and you get buy them. I know it's strange. Amazon does that for you digitally now, but the idea that I would just go sit in Borders in the personal finance aisle, and I would grab Susie Orman, Robert Kiyosaki, Dave Ramsey, Tony Robbins was just joining in there, Jim Cramer, anything I could digest that was around this topic, because I was scared. I now knew the physical toll, and I looked at it and I said, wow, like what if I end it without anything to show? That's even worse. So I started to just absorb from the personal finance gurus, and I started to ask people a lot of questions. One of which became my mentor, and his name's Brett Carolyn. He was a former Washington State football player, now 20 years in the financial industry. So I started talking to Brett, and I said, hey, man, like, what should I be doing here? What can I do there? And we had about a year of going back and forth, and he finally just said, listen, I love talking about this. I could feed you fish all day long. But if you seem really curious, start studying for the CFP. Start looking into what this language is all about and teach yourself how to fish. So I took each off season and started studying for the certification in financial planning, which people who are interested in money, that is a great knowledge base of, a little bit about everything in the world of finances, personal finances, that is. And as my knowledge grew in this realm, my brothers, who one was getting a master's in engineering at Berkeley, the other was getting his Harvard Law degree, started asking the big dumb jock about money. That's when I really started to have light bulbs go off. Sure, I was telling guys in the locker room who would ask, like, what's the 401k and what should we do here and how can I do this? But when my brothers, who are the upper echelon of academics, didn't know money, it really started to make me question. And so I went and I worked actually at Brett's firm, Brighton Jones, for about 5 years, certified my CFP, was in wealth management on a daily basis around experts, no different than the NFL. I was around the best in the world in this subject. But I came to the realization that I love advising. I love financial advisors, wealth managers. They have an important job. But where I was spending my best time, where I was looking forward to my week, was when I would go to a local high school, a college, a club, a company, and I would teach people the fundamentals of money. I would teach them what I sought out and started to understand on my own. And as that kind of passion started to grow, I started to look around. I said, well, this is what I want to do. I don't want to just teach wealthy people or wealthy people's kids about money. I think I want to go impact entire communities. I think it would be really amazing to empower 1 million people. And so I started writing a book, and it's a story book that has analogies teaching people the fundamentals of money. It's called Your Money Vehicle. And we called it that because one is yours. It's not mine. It's not Will's. It has to be yours. And it's a vehicle because one of the first things we want to do is change your perception of what money is supposed to be doing. Money is not the destination. Money is not the goal. Money is something that takes you to an opportunity of your dream and your goal. That is a different semantics. That is a different approach. It's a different mindset into how we look at our dollars. So today I get to run Money Vehicle. We're growing. We have not only the book, but we have virtual course, which is scaling to high school and college campuses across the country. And we're really just looking at how do we change people's perception from the one I was, a spendor, to savor, and eventually becoming investor. And so I love to ask people, what type of or are you? Spendor, savor, investor. And my English majors come at me and say, Jed, those don't all end in OR. And I say, you don't understand marketing.
So, all right. So let's talk about the book a little bit. I know a lot of people probably are like, yeah, I'm not so sure about that 401k or whatever.
Yeah.
What's the base? We don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but I'm just generally curious. How did you even decide what to write about, and kind of what is the basic structure and content? And let's start with the book.
Yeah. So that was truly the hardest part, because where do you begin with money? And it's not taught in schools. Financial literacy, there are the 3 or 4 concepts that everybody agrees on, but then from there, what? And honestly, I had so many little stories, articles. I would print out Microsoft Word, my stories. And I looked at it and I said, this is not one book. This is several books. So we got to start there. So this is going to be the first 10. We have level 2 that is already in creation, level 3 on the horizon. But the first book, Your Money Vehicle, the one out, and the course that is out, is the first 10 steps on your financial journey. So many personal finance books of the past focus solely on investments and how to beat the stock market or learn how to, do all this stuff. We have a chapter on investing, but the reality is you control very little of the investment world, and you don't need to become an expert in investing to make it go to work for you. So what we did was, from my CFP, from the wealth management side, we always approached money with a holistic lens. We didn't just see investing. We saw 10 different topics, subjects around personal finances. So what we did was I was delivering these workshops. We just took the first step in each of those 10 categories, and we created a story. And more importantly, we showed the action. So it's not an education book. It's an empowering book, because after reading and going through and taking the course, you should have the first steps of your financial plan, come to fruition and kind of behind you.
That's great. So the basic structure then that you, if we dive into the details a little bit, the principles or even specific tactics that you teach in that book for financial literacy, financial planning, financial execution, what are those for those maybe younger audience listening in? What if you were to give the sort of the Cliff Notes
60s.
version? Yeah. What would you say?
A term I've learned in corporate America, the 30,000 foot view.
There you go.
So this is what I love. And again, this is my passion. This is where I would say, if you are 15, 18, 22, 25, and you're saying, hey, I'm just starting to get my first paychecks, what do I do? Chapter 1 is around why do you care? And you care because pensions are gone, Social Security is not going to be dependable, and you have to begin to set goals and take advantage of your money vehicle. So you have to be able to prioritize and put direction into where we're going. So chapter 1 is a big mindset piece around setting goals and understanding why you need to care today. Chapter 2 is the fundamental practice of compound interest. I think, Albert Einstein did it, the 8th wonder of the world. I think it's just one of these things that a lot of people talk about. Some people understand, most people don't, but you got to understand how money creates money. that gives you the reason. So chapter 1 is why you want to go do it. Chapter 2 is how it all works. Then we get into chapter 3 with the money bucket system, and it's a cash management system. I don't use the word budget. I don't like the word budget. It's cash management because you are in control of it. It doesn't control you. And so we go through the 5 choices you have with every paycheck, every dollar you make, whether it's you or Jeff Bezos, it's the same 5 questions. Chapter 4 is who's your first teammate? This is not going to knock your socks off. It's a banker, and it's setting up your fundamental practices around a checking and a savings account, but more so not for wealth creation, more for your planning. You just talked about a cash management system. Your bank accounts are going to be how and where those are run. Chapter 5 is the first mistake most people make in their financial plan around credit cards. Chapter 6 is the sexy engine on your money vehicle. It is around investing, stocks, bonds, diversification, difference between mutual fund and an index fund. Spoiler alert, we're big fans of index funds. Chapter 7 introduces us to how to transfer risk. In wealth management, our first goal is to remove as many, landmines or from your plan as possible. And we do that through insurance. So we talk about what insurance is, what is a premium, what is a deductible, and how most people get introduced to it through auto insurance. Chapter 8 is an interesting one because I got a lot of pushback on why I thought this was necessary in the curriculum. It's around cybersecurity. And I think it is because we are in a daily battle. And it's not just, emails anymore. It's social media, it's text messages. People are trying to get your information, and around money, that needs to be a common conversation and protection. Chapter 9, we talk about taxes, going from gross to net, and understanding the progressive income tax code. But again, we tell everything through stories. So we go to an ice cream parlor for our tax strategy. And then chapter 10, we land in, well, which accounts should I open? What is the most advantageous account to me, ideally being a young professional? And we talk about the difference between a brokerage, a 401k, and a Roth account. Another spoiler, we're big fans of Roth accounts.
It is a straight up shame that curriculum isn't in every school across America and the world yet. And I love the same drive that brought you into the NFL. A successful NFL run is compelling you to get this in front of all of our middle schoolers and teenagers out there. How is that going, by the way? So first of all, the outline of the book is amazing. You're basically selling me. I want to get some copies for my kids here. But two, how is the process? So you have the book, you have the course. For those listening that are maybe just curious about they can participate in this, tell us how are things going?
So you are an entrepreneur 10 times over. Your listeners understand it is a freaking journey. Daily highs, daily lows, and each one comes with more clarity. So I started doing this full time. I've been teaching and doing Money Vehicle for a few years, but the business started January 1st of 2020, where a lot of our income was going to come from getting in front of groups and rooms and people and talking. About 2.5 months into it, they were like, hey, guess what? That income stream is no longer. So that was a huge swing and punch in the gut. But what I kept reminding myself was the decision I made to leave my job, my career, being a financial advisor and a planner, was seeing the mirror and saying, do I fear trying and failing, or do I fear regretting never have tried? And I think that is the entrepreneurial question, where anybody who has answered that, I fear regret more than I fear failure, is an entrepreneur and takes the leap. And so this year has been a series of ups and downs and pivots and changes. We always intended to take the book and make it a virtual course. Coronavirus, removing one income stream, limiting what we could do, brought that to fruition faster, I guess, than originally intended. But as of today, we are now ending our first year, not just with a book, but with a virtual course that people have asked for to be put into high schools and colleges for 30 years. Why it hasn't been done is really the hardest question for me to answer, because most people see what I'm doing and they're like, Jed, what's your upsell here? What's the intention? Are you going to gather data on them? Are you going to sell them something at the end? Why wouldn't this have been done? A lot of people say it's because you can't make money on it. They don't understand the beauty and the scalability of virtual courses. That's why we can offer these courses to schools at a very low price, because it is just that beautiful way of business.
Mm.
So it is going really, really well. We have college athletic departments. We have college fraternities and sororities, national houses offering it to their groups. We have investment clubs across the country. We are implemented into all of those, but also high schools. High schools across the country are harder to get into than colleges, oddly enough. But as we grow, as the validation is there, and more importantly, as students go through and turn around and tell their administrators, this is really good, we're starting to get warm introductions. And so the virtual course, I truly believe in the next 5 years, there will be an online financial literacy certification course in every high school in America. If it's not Money Vehicle, it's going to be one that looks oddly similar to it. Again, where we stand apart is, since I was a rookie in the NFL in 2008, I've Googled financial literacy certification. I just want to know what the fundamental things I need to know is. Never found one, so we created one, Entrepreneur. And so then I look at it and I say, how else do we differentiate? I would challenge people in the financial world, the money business, to watch our videos and tell me they're not more entertaining and engaging than the traditional money talk. And that's what our students have come back in droves saying, hey, you were silly, you were corny at times, whatever. You kept my attention and you taught me through a language I understood. And that is somebody who is a first generation American. That is somebody who comes from lower economic. That is somebody who comes from higher economic areas. We are teaching a language that everybody needs to understand. So right now, I'm very, very excited to see where 2021 takes the money vehicle movement, because that's really what has started as a movement.
So I work a lot with founders that are they have the day job. They're trying to figure out how to validate their idea, get enough momentum with kind of the side hustle or side hustles to try to leave the day job. So from a financial lens, how should entrepreneurs be thinking about that process? And I know this might be a little bit of a explore this together,
Mm-hmm.
but for those that are just worried about their money, worried about leaving the day job, but are really excited about their idea and their side hustles, what advice do you have for them?
There is no better uh, catalyst for creativity than need.
Hmm.
I couldn't make it in the NFL until I absolutely needed to, until I had the energy and the fire to go and do what I had to get done. And you hear, successful people and entrepreneurs say an income is what they give to crush your dreams. And so there is a part of it that is scary and that is a leap of faith. And that I will be the first one to say, I have no idea where this business is going, because I've never built this business before. And there is an ongoing education aspect. So again, I looked at it and said, I have two young girls, I have a beautiful wife, I got mouths to feed. Can I go and do this? I believed I could. And 3 months into doing it, I was kicked on my butt and told, well, actually, you're not making any money anymore. What do you do now? Um, so that day will come. And here's my only piece of advice is, most people stop. Most people quit. And what people have continued to tell me who meet me, they say, Jed, we believe you're going to be successful, not because you have a great idea, not because you have the breaks, but because you just don't quit. And that's growing up. I lost to my brothers every day of the week in basketball, thousands of day games, lost, lost, lost. But I always looked at it, and why I became a better athlete and a better basketball player than them is because I lost to them every day. And that's where the entrepreneurial fear really needs to drive you and say, if I failed, that's awesome. I got clarity, I got closer, and I got confidence, because it's not as scary once you experience it. So if you're balancing, do I want to do this? Look at it from a time horizon. If you took the next 2 years, 24 months, and said, I'm going to chase it, I'm going to try, Whatever comes, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to take 2 years, 1 year, whatever you want to give yourself, and find a way. Obviously, you got to have some financial runway. Um, I would be very curious to see how many more entrepreneurs would be successful if they approached it with that kind of tenacity. It's the ones that have a foot out the door. In the NFL, the one thing coaches don't want to know is that you have something else to do in life. And that's why I hid. I didn't show or tell anybody that I was studying for the CFP because I wanted people to believe I was all in. And there's some beauty in that. So as an entrepreneur, you got to measure it and you got to face it and you got to say, bring it on.
So I've seen tons of entrepreneurs leave the day job, give their idea a go, and it crash and burn, and then they don't have the financial runway to keep going at it.
Mm-hmm.
So my general piece of advice, and I'm curious to what you think. My general piece of advice is to actually hold on to the day job as long as you can, and think very creatively, and use those nights and weekends time to. That's where you never give up, right? That's where you're trying to creatively come up with a way of building your idea, building your side hustles, building your things. And then once you actually de-risk the side hustle, then you can creatively figure out how to work down your day job. And that's generally how I approach it. There's kind of a little bit of a misnomer or a myth out there around some of the most successful entrepreneurs being massive risk takers. I actually think not. I think me and many entrepreneurs out there that have been around many blocks and have been in this game for a long time, we're actually looking for a de-risking, right? Reducing the impacts of those black swan events that might come around, hence your comment around insurance and whatnot. And then looking for a lot of asymmetry on the upside, right? It's like de-risking asymmetry on the downside, optimizing asymmetry so that you can put in a little bit to gain a lot for the future. And I think the leaving the day job conversation is generally around that.
And so let me clarify, because I agree with you.
Okay.
So where we differ is when we were talking about where they are in their journey. If I am still figuring out what it is, what the vision is, what I want to do, what's my passion, keep the day job.
Yeah.
Must. But once you fully understand, once you've already, and so for me, it was once I had an audience that would pay and buy from me, once I began to, that is when I looked at it and I said, this thing should now take all of my time and all of my focus. But that was 2 or 3 years into it. You're right. I did not. And again, the first year fully, it has continued to get clarified, but I didn't leap until I saw the business, until I felt it and knew where I was going. So that is a great clarification there. Is if you are questioning and you are still building and you are still wondering, keep, no doubt.
Yeah, because then the $1 million question is, when is my idea validated, right? And like most things in life, there's no clear answer to that. It's very different depending on your business model and your industry and the dynamics of your market. It generally looks like there's some kind of acceleration of traction or whatever KPIs you're following, but that's that only the best founders who know their space, they know their product and their market really well. They're the only ones that can really answer that. So then for you, you shared a story right before we started recording around some recent TikTok actions. So as you're exploring different ways to market what you do, how have you approached the different social media channels or different marketing tactics? And I'm actually just very curious about the TikTok story in and of itself.
Yeah. So end of 2018, about December, I saw a podcast with Gary V, the social media guru. And he said, listen, if you're not on here in 3 years, you're going to wake up and you wish you were. And he meant social media in general. If you're not documenting and creating, you're going to wish you were. So 2019, I said, all right, I'm going to create a piece of content every day. Bring it on. And I did. And I started to gain traction. My focus was LinkedIn. One, because he said to focus on LinkedIn. And two, I thought like, hey, as a business professional, that's the best place for me to get an audience. And so as I continue down this path, you got to understand it's not easy. There are a lot of people screaming in the abyss of the internet. So knowing kind of who you are and creating every day really clarifies what your message is, how you add value. You got to begin to see what this story you've been continually putting out is saying. And then about, 6 months ago, TikTok came on my radar as, hey, this is the next place. Where I looked at Instagram, I didn't join Instagram until midway through 2019. I was about 5 years late to that game. So I'll never be the Instagram guru. I'll never be the dominant one. And it's been extremely hard to grow on Instagram. But what I looked at was, all right, if I'm not going to be that guy, I'm working and building on LinkedIn. Who is on TikTok? Who is that audience? They're young. Ooh, interesting. That's the people I want to talk to. Are they curious at all about learning? Well, actually, there is a huge community on TikTok that is very interested in learning, educating, and continuing to understand more. And so I said, all right, this is a platform I have to, join, and I have to, again, clarify what my story is going to be on there. No doubt I have an ace in the hole where I get to use my NFL experience. I get to talk about my days playing the dream and utilizing that. But what I came to realize was a lot of people on there are influencers, hundreds and thousands of followers, millions of likes and views, not because they had an ace in the hole, but because they realized who they wanted to find. And that is where you look at social media and you say, forget I am a creative, you are creative, we can think and do 1,000 different things, but who is that audience and community you want to build? I realized I got 10,000 followers on LinkedIn, and I put out a post about the course, and I had 0 purchases. 0 come from my 10,000 fans. And it really struck me, and it said, wow, like, so long I've been aiming at eyeballs. I want eyeballs. I want growth. I want growth. I want eyeballs. And what I've realized is eyeballs are fun, but they don't translate. You want heartbeats. You want people who are passionate about who you are and what you're doing. So this, I've gone full in on TikTok in October 1st. October 1st, I said, all right, I'm going to start posting every day on TikTok. And it's been October, November, December. We're halfway through December right now. And it's worked. It's an amazing little algorithm. It's a curious venture, but you find the audience, you find how to produce and what they want, and you make it entertaining and educational, and people are going to start tuning in. And, we just passed 1 million likes in almost 3 months. 100 days, 1 million likes is pretty incredible. I'm currently, which is what we were talking about, currently trending on there. My last 2 posts are well over 2 million views. We've gained, 15 to 20,000 followers in a day. You can't do that on Instagram. You can't do that on LinkedIn. It is a place of the future, but it is also a place where I go and I put a piece of content, I go live, and it is the first format where the community is there to have a conversation. They don't want to be talked at, they want to be talked with. And we have people lining up to ask questions and learn and do things that I at least have not experienced on any other platform. And I look at 2021, I say we went from 0 to 50,000 real quick. Can we go from 50 to 500 in a year? Let's see.
Oh, that's amazing. So, all right. So TikTok then in particular, obviously we'll put a link in the show notes to all your socials there. But TikTok in particular, like, what are you finding? What's different about that audience? They're young, they want to learn, but what's different about their even behavior and follow behavior compared to something like
Truly,
Instagram?
I'm finding a difference in, one, the platform itself, how it's run, how you're able to produce content, not just you alone, but they have an ability to do a green screen where you can have a great visual behind you or even a video playing behind you. I think one of the greatest nuances that they did to build the community was, I make a post and Will asks me a question and I can type back and answer Will's question, or I can click on a video button and now I have a video response directly to Will, which is why when you get on there, you're going to get to 100,000 followers real quick. Is every entrepreneur out there is going to want to ask you questions, and your content creates itself by your community. that was the moment that really changed to me. Was like, why am I busy trying to create the next cool thought when this person just asked me a question that 5 other people have asked me? Bam, that's the next piece of content. The other difference there is it is newer. And so people who are leaning in and committing, you feel that embodiment, you feel that social connection during a time of social distance. I think that is another piece and reason why it is popping, as well as just the format of delivery. It doesn't have to be as serious as other platforms. It just, you have to have good, catchy, clever content and you'll find traction.
That's
And
amazing.
consistent over and over and over. No doubt about consistency.
So I love the arc of your own journey, your own entrepreneurial story to get out and get after a business that you're passionate about. And I'm curious to hear just a little bit more about the big picture vision, right? What
Mhm.
world do you see if people are consuming your content, your educational material, becoming more financially literate? Like what is your hope for humanity with the specific venture that you're getting after here?
Well, we see the crisis in front of us: credit card debt, student loan debt. We see the income gap changing, the pandemic having created a bigger gap between the haves and the have nots. Some people say the have nots and the have yachts. Um, and so I look at it and I say, if I could, and this is Think and Grow Rich is an excellent book. Side note before I forget, my tagline is Fullback of Finance. So you can follow me at Fullback of Finance. But Think and Grow Rich is an excellent read. And the best takeaway is thoughts become things. And they challenge you to every day wake up and tell yourself your mission. And my mission right now is to empower 1 million people to use money and open a Roth account. Now, USE is an acronym in Money Vehicle that says understand money, strategize your money, and be efficient with your money.
Mm.
U.S.E. And if you truly use money, by use, we say make money go to work for you. Don't just solely go to work for money. If you're using it, you will see chapter 10 of level 1 and say a Roth account makes a lot of sense to me. And so if we can open 1 million Roth accounts for young professionals, we will confidently be able to say we've empowered people to use money. Now, it doesn't stop there. Like, I'm not standing here and saying, hey, by the end of your money vehicle, you're going to be off and running and you'll never have a question in mind. There's a level 2 and there's a level 3. And then there's financial advisors for a reason, because I can't get on TikTok and give you stock tips, and I won't because I'm a CFP and I'm smarter than that. But I also won't because there is nothing that is right for everyone. There is no stock tip, there is no product. And so if somebody, usually insurance, sells you on a one-stop shop product, they're selling you snake oil because nothing is right for everyone. And so as we look at it, we really want to educate people to use these dollars. And how we see it changing is the conversations. We want to make being financially literate a social norm as opposed to a social oddity. And if we can get there, if we can make the cool kid on campus or the whoever the one that understands, strategizes, and is efficient with money, then we can really make a social change. I can't do that. Will, you can't do that. But what we do have is the leaders who are 16, 20, 22, starting to wake up and say, Jed, this movement is real. I want to join it and I want to share it with my community, however big or small. And that is really how we can change the game. Looking at it in 10, 20 years, we could have an army of people who are not mega millionaires. And that's part of this. Is your dream is to not become a 10, 50, $100 million yacht person. Your dream is to find financial freedom. And that is set based on your personal experiences, but also your personal interactions.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. Well, this has been incredible, insightful. Thank you for your time. And again, we'll put the links in the show notes, but just as a quick reminder, how can people find you online?
Absolutely. So if you're interested in the course, yourmoneyvehicle.com will get you access to the 10, full virtual financial literacy certification course. Um, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or YouTube, Jedediah Collins, or the rest of them is going to be Fullback of Finance. That's TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Fullback of Finance, I didn't think of, but people thought it was creative to kind of connect our two dots. But I welcome questions. How we create content is based on questions. We want you to join the community. We have a newsletter. You let us know how you like to digest information, and we'll get it to you. So Will, appreciate it, brother. I'm excited to send this out because, again, I get excited and passionate, and I run off in 100 different directions. But thank you, and I look forward to continuing to collaborate and work with you, sir.
All right, Jedzilla, the Fullback of Finance. It was a pleasure. Thank you. All right, a couple quick things before you go. Number one, I have a general newsletter where I write about technology and startups and health science and teaching people to code. And I write about a variety of different subjects that we talk about on this show. So if you go to wclittle.com, there you'll be able to subscribe, and you'll also be able to subscribe to particular topics. If you're just interested in one or a few of them, you'll be notified right when I publish new content in those areas. Number two, my partners and I at ROTH Ventures have a portfolio company called Startup Rocket. If you go to startuprocket.com, there you'll be able to receive coaching guides and customize an operations framework for you and your team and your advisors to be on the same page in terms of what is the appropriate next step for you and your entrepreneurial journey. And finally, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review anywhere that you have listened to this podcast or watched this podcast, it'd be super helpful to help those who might be interested in consuming this content as well. Thank you.